Hi guys, welcome to Top Couch. In today's video, we're going to see some of the unbelievable survival stories. Do like the video and share your thoughts in comments. Most of us are familiar with the basic facts of the story. A plane with a Uruguayan rugby team on board crashes into the Andes Mountains. Many on board are killed, and after several weeks without rescue and a few failed attempts to walk off the mountain, the survivors are forced to resort to cannibalism. Nando Parado, the hero and the author of the book Miracle in the Andes, has provided a fresh retelling of the high-altitude plane crash through the lens of the person most responsible for the rescue of the survivors. The original story was recounted in the 1974 bestseller. Although he suffered a fractured skull, was unconscious for the next 3 days after the crash, and was presumed to ultimately succumb to his injuries, Parado was able to revive. After several weeks of recovery, he eventually devised a plan and led a team over the 17,000-foot peak that trapped the survivors on a glacier and marched 10 days to rescue. The Robertson family. For 38 days, the Robertson family was lost at sea. Patrick Dougal Robertson, a British dairy farmer, just wanted to take his family on a boat trip for the University of Life, as his son called it. On January 27, 1971, Dougal, his wife, and their 4 children set out on a wooden schooner called the Lucid, heading to parts unknown. Douglas, the eldest son, told that his father had made few preparations for the trip, though he had been in the British Merchant Navy. For 17 months at sea, the family fared well, sailing from port to port and seeing the world. But on June 15, 1972, the family encountered a group of killer whales off the coast of the Galapagos Islands. The whales attacked the boat, splintering it and severely damaging it. The ship was taken in water. All they had was a lifeboat and a small dinghy, and just 6 days' worth of food. They survived on rainwater and hunted turtles adrift at sea, hoping to ride Pacific currents to the middle of the ocean, which would then push them towards the Americas. Worth of food. After 16 days, the raft was no longer usable, so the family, their one inexperienced crew member, fled to dinghy. It was a 10-foot boat far over capacity, but they managed to cling on until they were discovered by Japanese fishermen on July 23, 1972. Harrison Okene. On May 28, 2013, divers in the wreckage of the Jackson 4 were attempting a triage of the vessel, was 100 feet down off the coast of Nigeria after capsizing. What they didn't expect to find was a survivor. Harrison Okene was the ship's cook. He was in the latrine when the boat capsized and tried to reach an emergency exit hatch but failed. The boat began to fill with water, with Okene trapped inside. Eventually, he found himself trapped with a 4-square-foot bubble of air. After 3 days, he had given up hope. Then he heard a knock. It was the hammer of the divers working on the surface of the ship. Eventually, diving gear was brought to him and he was brought to a decompression chamber where he had to spend 2 days. He had been at depths that should have killed him in a situation that took the lives of everyone else on board. Unsurprisingly, he vowed never to go out to sea again. Juliane Köpke. She had 2 big survival stories to tell by the end of her ordeal. On Christmas Eve 1971, Köpke flew on Lanta Flight 508. The plane was struck by lightning. The plane began to disintegrate in midair, and Köpke found herself still strapped to her seat 2 miles above the Peruvian rainforest. She was battered. She was bruised. Her collarbone was broken, but she was alive, the only survivor of the flight. And now she found herself in the wilderness alone. Some candy was her only food, but she found a small stream. She waded down water in it, able to keep herself hydrated at the same time. The insects in the jungle stopped short of eating her alive, and maggots had infected her arm, but after 9 days, she was able to find an encampment. She gave herself rudimentary first aid, including pouring gasoline on the maggot infestation. After a few hours, Lumber workers found her, giving her first aid and taking her to a more inhabited area where she was airlifted to a hospital. Apollo 13. To date, no living humans have been as far in space as the crew of Apollo 13. The ashes of Clyde Tombaugh have as far past Pluto by now, but that's a different story. The cruise path took them 248,655 miles from Earth before swinging back down for a miraculous landing. But the crew never made it to the surface of the moon, their original destination. Instead, Jim Lovell, Jack Swigert, and Fred Hayes encountered a problem that could have killed them all. All faulty wiring ignited an oxygen tank, blowing out part of the spacecraft. Using the lunar module as a lifeboat, the crew stretched the rations that remained. They had to make a day and a half worth of food for 2 people, last for 4 days among 3 people. The crew had to make an orbital correction that took them far away from the moon to slingshot them back towards the Earth. The lunar module provided a safe haven for the astronauts in space while the crew was in space, but the craft couldn't survive atmosphere re-entry. The crew moved back into the damaged command module before successfully making it to the ground, all unharmed save a severely dehydrated Hayes. Aaron Ralston. Ralston will forever be known as a guy who cut his hand off to escape a climbing accident that left him trapped between 2 boulders. Ralston was climbing in Blue John Canyon in Utah alone. As he shimmied down a canyon, a boulder came loose and trapped Ralston's hand. No one knew he was there, and he only had a little bit of water and a little bit of food. It was up to himself to rescue. He struggled for 3 days before deciding to self-amputate in order to extricate himself. But after 2 days of trying various methods, he nearly gave up. At this point, he was out of water and surviving on his own urine. That is until an idea came to him on day 6. He could amputate a portion of his own arm much easier if he could only break his radius and ulna. After an hour of work with a cheap multi-tool, he had amputated his hand successfully and had to still get back to his vehicle, descending a 65-foot wall with one hand. He was eventually discovered by a European family on a campout, and 6 hours after his self-amputation, he was rescued by authorities. He was found just in time. Ralston was on the brink of death from the blood loss. He survives today, still doing outdoor expeditions and climbing adventures. Ada Blackjack. Alaska native Ada Blackjack was a member of the indigenous Inupiat people. She was hired by the Canadians and Alan Crawford on an expedition to the Wrangel Islands, which are now considered rich in territory. The goal was to claim them in the name of Canada, and Blackjack was the seamstress and cook of the expedition. 5 members of the expedition were left on the island on September 16, 1921 as a territorial claim, but their rations soon ran low. 3 members went off in search of help, while Blackjack took care of an ailing crewmate who later perished, leaving her alone on the island. Blackjack survived there for 2 years, not an easy task considering the risk of polar bear attack. She learned to hunt seals and partly survived off their meat until she was finally rescued on August 28, 1923, almost 2 years after she had been left on the island. According to a site run by the University of Alaska, Anchorage, Blackjack did not receive a hero's welcome. Instead, she was criticized for not saving the life of her male crewmate, though the family eventually vindicated her after meeting with her and issuing a statement that Blackjack had done everything possible to save their son's life. Still, she spent the rest of her life in poverty before her death in 1983.